So they've always been a bit difficult with their reflux, and they were premature. They were 2 months premature. So it's always been a bit hit and miss with their feeds. When we left the hospital, they were on 4-hourly feeds, which they tolerated for a couple of days in the hospital. And then when we got home, we were struggling to get the amount in. And so we dropped it back down to 3 hours, and obviously a lesser amount. And then they were okay. And then as we sort of increased the amount of milk they were having quite quickly, they were taking it quite nicely. And then when the vomiting and the discomfort seemed to sort of hit a peak, they started not refusing bottles, but not enjoying them, coming off and crying. It was quite sporadic. And then when it got to the point where it was nearly every bottle, that's when I found your Facebook and reached out. And they'd be hungry, and they'd go for the bottle, latch on the bottle, and then pull away. Sometimes playing, sometimes sort of just looking around and getting nosy. And then other times, especially my twin two, who is still sort of the worst with her reflux, and she still sort of isn't particularly interested in her bottles. She would get really quite angry and stressed, very stressed. They'd probably take the bottle or most of it, but it would just be from start to finish, just really stressful for her and for us. I was reading a little bit about bottle aversion before I found your Facebook, and it's saying about inadvertent force feeding. And I thought, well, we are doing that, but they need to have it, and that's the mentality. Me more so than my husband. He was sort of like, well, if they don't take it, they're not hungry, it's okay. Yeah. And I was like, but they need to. This is what we've been told they need to have. They need to have this amount. They would fluctuate between feeds of they take more in the evening. So I thought, okay, well, we can play around with the amounts a bit. And now they do take varying different amounts during the day, but I kind of worked out where they're the most hungry. It was just when it was sort of every feed, I was getting upset and then angry. And I think it was the anger that upset me the most, because I was getting angry at my babies for what, really. It was really horrible. But I think I knew it was my fault. But I didn't know I couldn't get out of the mentality of they need to have this amount. They need to, I don't know why, thinking back, because they've always gained weight. Maybe not quite as much, but they were really small when they were born. They're still small, but they're tracking, but they've not dipped. And no one's ever said they've got cause for concern of their weight gain or anything like that. Yeah. But the outreach nurses didn't say it, but sort of hinted at the fact that they should have this amount. Yeah. And it kind of felt like if they don't have that amount, then that's something to worry about. It was really difficult because it was really taking a step back and letting them control. It is very much, I know best. And I know that's not true. But at the time it was sort of, okay, fine, you're not hungry, but I know that unless they take a really small amount, they're not hungry before at least 3.5 hours. So even if I thought, well, okay, if they don't feed well, they'll feed more, it didn't really work like that. But when I sort of managed to step back a little bit, I could sort of predict if they didn't feed well at this feed, I'm thinking, well, I'll probably put a little bit extra in the next one because I reckon they'll be hungry. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the stepping back and sort of offering it, taking it away, making sure they're happy, it was really difficult. My husband nailed it. He was much better. He's just so much less worried. No, that's wrong. He is worried, but he's not as worried, and he's just, they're humans, they're babies with free will. They'll take what they want. And they do let us know when they're hungry. So I think the worry was if they don't take that, then their numbers will be less, and then it will just get worse and worse. Instead of actually just letting them tell me and roll it out for a few days and see what happens, I was sort of, no, they have to take it. And if it's a bad feed, it's the end of the world. When, It's not. I think doing it consistently, a few days, we were seeing some improvement. The numbers, the sort of the volumes weren't fabulous, but we were getting to the end of the feed, and they weren't getting stressed throughout the feed. When I started trying your techniques, I definitely stopped when they were getting stressed. And it also gave me a time to sort of step back and calm down. It's taken away a lot of stress. My husband and I were arguing because I just couldn't. It's like I couldn't listen to reason. When it happened, I just got really stressed, really anxious, and just worried. And as soon as it started, it's like I could see her pulling away and getting annoyed. I was thinking, oh, here we go. And then you think you're then set for the next half an hour or so of just misery on both our parts. So when we started to see better results, and they were happier, and then inevitably then the volumes went up a little bit. They're probably not as much as they should have, but they're taking what they're taking.
According to who?
Yeah.
I always ask, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not monitoring what they take anymore. I'm not doing their intake anymore. So it's a bit of ignorance is bliss as well. But when we start seeing those improvements, the stress that I had went definitely, and therefore the sort of the strain that my husband and I had lessened, and we just enjoyed them more. Because it was all about feeding when they're in hospital, because they were so premature. It was all about the feeds, and everything centered around the feed. So we do a napper change of feed, but and then we can't do this because they're due a feed, and because they were so refluxy, and to begin with, we couldn't lie them flat after a feed. So it was all about the feeds. And obviously, when we first came home, it was 3 hours, 24/7. Then it's 4 hours, and now it's 4 hours during the day, and they sleep at night. But it's trying to take it away from it all being about the feeds and actually stepping back and enjoying them. So we get to do more playtime with them now, because their reflux is better controlled, definitely. So I can play with them more. And then I look at the time and think, oh, you're due a bottle. Or they tell me they want a bottle, rather than counting down the sort of the time going, oh God, it's coming up to 10 o'clock. I need to feed you. Yeah, it's just so, it is a million times better than it was. For all of us, including my husband and me.
Yeah.
Try and step out of the moment and look at the baby, in whatever position it is, and sort of then just try and remember that it's a baby. It's because I know I didn't. It was, this milk needs to go in you, and I do this and I do this, and then you take the milk and I burp, and then we're done. And it's a machine. Because it was for a good couple of months, because they were so young and so sleepy, it was sort of pick up, feed, down, done. And it was, and then because they slept so much as well. And then it's sort of forgetting that they're now turning into little humans. And sort of like when they're getting stressed, it's so easy to just get also stressed. But actually sort of trying to step back and look at your baby and go, what can I do to help this? I can't help your discomfort. I can't help your whatever it is that may be causing this, but I can stop and try and make you feel better. And then, like you say, sort of take the bottle away, play a game, get them happy, get them smiley. But when they're feeding, like I know they're having a good feed when they stay really still and their arms are up and they're on their side and they're concentrating, and you can see the mouth going and they're really going for it. And it's when I see that it makes me really happy, because they're enjoying it. They're hungry, they're taking it. And you look at the milk going down and think, oh, thank God. But even when they're not necessarily doing that and they're having a look about, it's a little bit easier now, because when they are looking about, it's because they're curious, they're looking around. But in watching them, it's sort of learning their cues, learning what position they're comfortable in. Eliza was in a slightly more comfortable position, slightly more on her side than her sister, and sort of getting to know them. Because I thought I knew them quite well, but I didn't. I think stepping back and looking at your baby, and forget numbers and rules, maybe, if that's a word, like should haves. Because like you said to me, every baby is different, and they will take what they want. Thank you so much for your help. It really has been a lifesaver.